Okay, true story. It's a Sunday morning. The phone rings. A lady's voice says, I'm a reporter from San Francisco. Can you clear something up? I don't know. What's the question? She says, they had a huge fire here last night, St. Patrick's Day. Fire department got there in 2 minutes, and the folks they cleared out of 2 bars on the first floor said that the flames were 20 feet over the roof when they got outside. They said the top 2 floors were completely engulfed in flames when the firefighters arrived. Okay, I said. Anybody hurt? No, the reporter lady says. But a city official who was there said the fire department took too long to pour water on the fire. Okay, I responded. They got there in 2 minutes, no one was hurt, and they put the fire out. Then we win. Reporter lady continued, but how much time are you supposed to take to pour water on the fire after you get there? What are the standards, the rules, the regulations for how long you should take to pour water on the fire after you get there? I said, look, I'm sure you're a nice person, but this is a dangerous and dirty job. We show up, we try to figure out what we have, and what we can do about it with what we have. It's messy, it's fast, and if you don't know what you're doing, you could never appreciate how much craftsmanship, how much elegance is required to stretch hose, throw ladders, and extend a search. Silence. Reporter lady. Could you give me the names of some people who could actually tell me what the rules, the standards, the regulations are, from the textbooks about how long it should take to pour water on the fire after you get there so I could quote them in the article? Stand by, I said. The aftermath of every significant incident leaves behind 5 things: a report, a new rule, a scapegoat, some poser on the speaking circuit, and the slow death of truth. For us, if we follow the rules and things go wrong on the fireground, the elites among us will cry, and those with no skin in the game will bemoan that we failed to innovate, deviate, and improvise. If we innovate, deviate, and improvise, and things go wrong on the fireground, the elites among us will cry, and those with no skin in the game will bemoan that we didn't follow the rules. It's a zero-sum game. It's all about zero. To quote the great Paul Chillers, 0 is a great commitment, but a lousy goal. So you wonder, how did we, our society, get to a place where when things go wrong, and they will, you are damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't? Today there are those who think they're smarter than everyone else. They're better than us. They have alphabets after their names. They introduce themselves with insider titles that signal that they are smarter, more intelligent, and enlightened. They are not. To quote Nassim Taleb, they are generally considered intellectuals, but idiots. To begin with, they have no skin in the game. We do. They share none of the outcome. We do. They believe there is no difference between academia and the real world. In the real world, there is. We have skin in the game. For us, firefighting is about honor, justice, and the things that we know are essential to humanity. And remember, it's our fire service. And to keep it, we need to continue to make the rules locally. We cannot allow some self-appointed DC genius with no skin in the game. We can't allow some enlightened progressive bureaucrat who loves systems, and we certainly cannot allow some politician who has never had the guts to bunker up and lay it on the line, dictate to those of us who have how to fight fire. We make the rules locally, rules that we get to bend and break and ignore because we have skin in the game. The brilliant game theorist Ariel Rubinstein teaches researchers Do your mathematical theories. Do your representations. But do not tell people in the real world how to apply them. Let those with skin in the game select what they need. Or, even better, as Sextus Empiricus said 2,200 years ago, those who talk should do, and only those who do should talk. And yes, it's a dirty and dangerous job. No suits and ties are needed. No advanced degrees are necessary. All it takes is thousands of hours of drill, thousands of hours of training, thousands of hours of study, thousands of hours of PT, thousands of hours evaluating every call, thousands of hours of getting certified, qualified, and cleared so you can learn something new every day. And if you are lucky, after years of hard work, dedication, years of sweat and blood and sore muscles and bumps and bruises and fractures, if you are like the men and women in this room, you might be worthy enough to be called a firefighter, a craftsperson, and be recognized as a highly skilled master of the most complicated craft in history. Or we can let the progressive, authoritarian, high modernist bureaucrat elitist know-it-alls, like the aforementioned city official, with their charts and graphs and systems and clipboards and rules and regulations and data, tell us how to do something they never have and never would do. So how'd we get here? We have, as a society, for about the last 600 years, both enjoyed and endured the legacy of the Enlightenment. Recently, over the last 150 years or so, modernism, and with it industrialization, has produced for us a standard of living which is unrivaled. It has also encouraged standards for everything. Industrialization and modernism has given us centralized control, incident commanders, specialization, division of labor, and systems of compliance, which are very useful up to a point. They have made us obsessed with records, data, policies, procedures. All of this is very beneficial. All of this is very useful up to a point. And then it becomes tyrannical. The Enlightenment and modernism also gave rise to the misguided belief in the perfection of man through behavioral control. This delusion, in the extreme, gave us eugenics, Nazis, communists, socialists, and a legacy of more than 200 million dead and years of tyrannical oppression and suffering. I bet you're wondering, what does all this stuff have to do with the fire service? Let's start with standardization. Standardization, compliant ways of doing work, which is good for the risks we know. Very good, in fact. And that accounts for much of what we do. But where it falls short is in diverse, novel, and complex incidents, which we also do a lot of. Where it gets messy is when we deal with uncertainty. Where it gets messy is when we deal with the risks that we don't know or aren't aware of. Where it gets messy is when we deal with what we know, or worse, what we think we know that ain't so. On August the 5th, 1945, a fire officer named Wagner Dodge had just joined 14 other firefighters who were attacked to fight a wildfire in the Man Gulch in Montana. Wagner had 9 seasons fighting wildfires, the last 4 as a team leader. Now, he had just joined this team today as their group leader. Normally, they would have spent weeks together, training, drilling, becoming acquainted as a crew. But due to another assignment, today was Wagner's first day. To attack the fire, they parachuted into the top of Man Gulch at around 1,500 hours and began the climb down. The fire was on the south slope. The plan was to climb down the north slope and attack the fire from below. At around 1745 hours, Wagner notices that the fire has spotted below them. He knew his crew was in mortal danger, and he needed to retreat as quickly as they could back up the mountain. They did so, dropping their tools in a mad sprint for survival. Now, 2 smoke jumpers who were at the back of the crew line, they made it to this safe rocky outcropping where they watched in horror as Wagner Dodge did something insane. Dodge recognized 3 things. The climb to safety was too steep. The fire, fed by 30-mile-an-hour winds, was just too damn fast. And the tall, thick grasses were just too explosive a fuel. Stunned, the 2 firefighters in the rocks above watched as Dodge lit fire to the grasses in front of him, blocking his way. Dodge began pleading with the other smoke jumpers to follow him into the burnt-out grasses. None did. Alone, Wagner wet his handkerchief, put it over his face, and he lied down in the burnt-out area that he had created. At 17:55 hours on August the 5th, 1945, 12 smoke jumpers died in Man Gulch. Wagner Dodge and the 2 smoke jumpers in the rocks above him survived. No one had ever done such a thing before. No one had ever thought in such a way before. Wagner Dodge defied the existing standards. Wagner Dodge innovated, deviated, and improvised. Wagner Dodge violated the rules, and he lived. Those who followed the rules died. Wagner Dodge failed forward, embracing his situation, but resisting his fate. Wagner Dodge didn't fail. The system failed. Wagner Dodge did the right thing. He fought. Our fire service has reverence for complexity, randomness, and the unpredictability of where we do our work. Fires spot, winds change, floors fail, ceilings collapse. Some things are unpredictable. As such, we accept and we respect the critical necessity of those to complete the mission in standard ways when possible, alternative ways when possible, but surrender or doing nothing is never an option. Appreciating the complexity of our mission requires that firefighters take a broad view, requires we're modest in our self-assessments, respectful of uncertainty, and that we understand the difference between the times that we should follow the rules and the times that we should throw the rules out. Today, we are, to perhaps a greater extent than ever before, involved with science and research in our work, as is the rest of our postmodernist society. The Enlightenment of the 1600s, like everything else, had its good and had its bad. It gave us the scientific method, individual and natural rights. It gave us Locke and Rousseau. But it also gave the rise to secularism, the nation state. It fostered the rise of collectivism, and its legacy is authoritarian and modernism. To the laypersons, civilians, who today are thoroughly indoctrinated in modernism, they absolutely believe that all that's required is that you follow the rules, stay to the procedures, and no one will get hurt. They have been indoctrinated that all accidents are human-caused by bad actors, macho cowboys, immoral and reckless and aggressive deviants. Deviation from any prescribed method, any form of non-compliance is failure or the root cause of failure. But this authoritarian view does not appreciate the complexity of the fireground or the necessity of the craftsperson, the experienced firefighter who can innovate, deviate, and adapt and adjust when conditions dictate. The authoritarian view demands compliance with standards, systems, procedures that have been validated by science, approved by engineers, and backed by research, and endorsed and enforced often by those who are not affected by those rules. However, those who participate in science and those who endeavor to promote science are ever conscious of what Seneca taught us when he said the time will come when through diligent research over long periods of time we'll bring to light things that now lie hidden. He said there will come a time when our descendants will be amazed that we did not know the things that are so plain to them. Things that now lie hidden. During the Second World War, the highest casualty rates were among the air crews, specifically the bomber crews. Not because they didn't follow the rules, they did. Not because they weren't highly trained, they were. Because it was a dirty and dangerous job, and one that true patriots competed fiercely to get. The Army was always trying to figure out how to improve the odds of survival for these air crews. Tactics were studied, systems were constantly modified and adjusted, risks were analyzed and evaluated. They brought in a group of engineers to try to figure out a better way to design the armor plating on the bombers to make them stronger, more resistant to flak and bullets. One of those engineers was Abraham Wald. They were told to examine the returning planes and try to figure out where to add additional armor. They spent weeks looking over the planes, photos of the planes, to examine where they got hit and what kind of damage they had so they could figure out how to better protect them. They made detailed studies, patterns of damage of the aircraft, and it was proposed that armor should be added in those places that showed the most damage. Seems to make sense. After a few weeks, Abraham stopped. He asked to see the general in charge. He said, "This is a mistake. We are looking at the planes that survived. We are looking at the risks we know. We are fixing the wrong holes. We should be looking at where they didn't get hit. Those are the places on the planes that didn't come back, the holes that we don't know about." We find the fire service intertwined with science and technology. Both are relevant. Both are used to assess our engagements, develop our procedures, systems, and rules. And this is a very good, very necessary, and very just thing. But these rules, procedures, and systems can never account for everything, can never anticipate everything. They can't see the holes that didn't come back or anticipate what some innovator, some Dodge or Wagner or Abraham Wald is going to discover that now lies hidden. This is why we must continue to promote craftsmanship, not compliant rule following. Celebrate and promote the dignity of our work, not some algorithm. Celebrate and promote humanity's genius, not the misguided belief in the infallibility of systems. Neither algorithms or systems can measure the intentions or the drive of the dedicated firefighter, the craftsperson, to complete the mission. As such, standards, algorithms, compliant methods of doing work are insufficient as measures when the outcome is less than ideal. Firefighters fully understand our industry is wedded to complex social and technological systems and plagued by randomness and uncertainty. We know that much of what we know or think we know will change with time. Firefighters generations from now will marvel, as Seneca predicted, at our lack of knowledge. We would do well to remember Daniel Bornstein's cautionary words. He said, "The greatest obstacle to knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge." Regretfully, we function in a society where a lot of people believe that we can and that we should be able to engineer every risk in life to zero. Blame it on Star Trek, a lack of humility, or humankind's limitless conceit. As a consequence, we have come to define the unpredictable and sometimes tragic events that occur when those intersections of nature, technological, and human systems come together as failure. We see this in virtually every after-action report. Rather than examining the brittle system, rather than examining the goal conflicts, time constraints, limited understanding, resource demands, cognitive limits of those involved, it's still more common to fall back 600 years to the simplicity and the seduction of reductionism. Far more common to use bias to disparage the firefighter, not the system. The hero who risked it all under massive uncertainty, who, if he falls, is a bad apple, a deviant, a complacent freelancer, and he must be vilified and purged from our ranks. These emotionally satisfying, yet woefully inadequate explanations and thoroughly disingenuous displays of virtue signaling are tragically leading us into the killing field of zero defect performance standards, zero target standards and expectations. While firefighters must continually strive for excellence, we cannot allow a zero defect culture to be forced on us by some intolerant, massive bureaucracy with no skin in the game. This is fundamental to our continued existence, to our innovation and creativity. While firefighters, we wrap ourselves in the cloak of armor provided by science. Ours is fundamentally an apprenticeship-based profession. As such, much like engineering, it is grounded in experience, not just theories and research, which are necessary. We understand that the student firefighter needs to follow rules, and this is important. We understand that the journeyman firefighter needs to work to a standard, and this is good. But firefighters, senior firefighters, relentlessly strive to be craftsmen and understand our work procedures. These craftsmen create benchmarks, create legends, create innovation, and develop character. Craftsmanship is necessary for our culture, our nation, and humanity. The zero defect mentality slaughters innovation, inhibits creativity, inspires hesitation, and inhibits the necessary aggressiveness we need to complete our mission. Zero defect ignores our obligation, our covenants to our fellow citizens and one another. It fouls our honor. Zero defect promotes the continuation of self-deception, the continuation of mediocrity, and the assurance of future repetition. It's the refuge of cowards. Firefighters with skin in the game know better. We understand the zero-target fallacy. It's currently a zero-sum game. If we follow the rules and things go bad, we fail to improvise. If we improvise and things go bad, we fail to follow the rules. We must reject zero defect and embrace and encourage allowing those, all of you, with skin in the game to occasionally fail forward. We prefer an honorable life to a comfortable existence. We reject the expert's construct of improved performance equals error reduction and standards compliance. Tragically, our Western culture is so diluted in our hubris that we are convinced that our ability to engineer can outperform even Mother Nature. It was William Butler Yeats who said, "The best lacked all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Nonetheless, the elite embrace the experts, whether or not such a classification even exists. They applaud their ability to retrospectively predict the now past future. This hindsight bias crystal ball stuff might be acceptable if your mission is of no lasting consequence, but not for us, not for firefighters with skin in the game. Not for the volunteer, not for the urban, not for the suburban, not for the wildland firefighter, not for any firefighter in this room. You are craftspersons. We rely on our experience. We trust our intuition. We gain from others' wisdoms. We are humble in our self-assessments. And we first and foremost respect the dignity of the workman and the product of their workmanship. Seneca once said, "Invest in good actions. Everything you have can be taken but good deeds and virtue." Firefighters understand Seneca. We get it that we don't know everything, but we're committed to good deeds and virtue. We gratefully use science and technology to formulate our best practices, standards that we call standards of care, to guide our decisions. And it's well that we do so. But standards do not reflect excellence, nor do they reflect minimalism. They reflect consensus. They reflect current understanding. As such, we be mindful of what Thatcher said of consensus. She called it the process of abandoning all your beliefs, principles, and values. This noble endeavor, our industry, is not set forth to promote firefighting consensus, nor do we value blind faith in standards or systems. We encourage challenges to compliance, especially to arbitrary rules constructed by bureaucrats who lack even a basic understanding of what is expected of a firefighter or what a firefighter is going through. We have tremendous respect for our SOPs, our guidelines, our standards of care formulated by our experienced predecessor. But the true firefighter understands when the engaged firefighter, in the moment, makes a call, drops a move, skips a step, because they believe it will work. We honor their intention, regardless of the outcome. In fact, despite the outcome. And quite frankly, unless that city official who is living under the umbrella of protection provided by one of the finest fire departments in the world is willing to put on a set of bunker gear and go in with the San Francisco Fire Department, we really don't give a damn what he thinks. We would just as well prefer that he says thank you and go on his way. Either way, don't tell us how to do our jobs. We will always honor the firefighter's judgment on scene in the moment more than we trust the standards applied retrospectively. We applaud the firefighters who push back against petty rules and coercive compliance. We respect the dignity of the craftsman, the expertise, the triumph of the humanity of our work, and the triumph of our collaborative problem solving, the disruptive insights we get every time we break through some artificially imposed constraint disguised as a standard or rule or some compliant way of doing our work. Firefighters, especially those in this room, all of you know how our mission works. We resist being infantized by elitists who we will always demand those whose actions speak truth, who have mastered our craft, who are pursuing a just purpose, one larger than themselves, and we will always question anyone who feels they have the right to make a rule that they don't have to live by. Firefighters with skin in the game know the difference between action and cheap talk, between outcomes and intention, between theory and practice, between honor and reputation, expertise and charlatanism, strength and display, commitment and signaling. But most importantly, we understand the tyranny of the collective and the indomitable strength of the individual. The truth is, when it matters, we get to make and break the rules because we suffer the consequences, good and bad. The truth is, ours is a noble profession, and it's honored because we do save others at our own personal risk. The truth is, it's our fire service, and we're not giving it up.